We are live, ladies and gentlemen, and I am here with half of live, joined always by my co-host, Mr. Chad Gracey, the heartbeat of live, and the one and only Lord of the Stomp, Mr. Chad Taylor. What is going on, gentlemen?
How's it going, guys?
Hey, welcome.
Thanks for having me on. This is such an honor. I was telling you guys just before we hit air, I'm a frequent viewer and a big fan of the podcast. I think you guys do a great job, and I just appreciate everything you guys have done to just keep the stories about the band, the music, all those things alive for all the fans.
Rock on.
Me included, by the way.
It's been fun. I mean, yeah, I think you were saying earlier, John pulled out a different side of me that I didn't know I had, because he asked me to do his podcast a couple of times, and we had fun. And then he's like, "You want to do a podcast?" And I'd never thought about doing one. I was like, "Sure, sounds fun. Let's try that out." So it's been fun.
This dude had too much personality to keep it behind a drum set and behind some plexiglass, so he had to break him out. You know what I'm saying, Mr. Taylor?
Yeah, exactly.
So John, my take on this, and I would have not known this having known Chad since age 13 going forward, but he's kind of like the Charles Barkley of your show. Like, I mean, he will say and do things that you're like, whoa, what's that? And it'll capture your mind. And I just think it's great. And I think it's brilliant. I will say this, that, in a band of four very large personalities, there's only so much airtime. And so it's so cool to see Chad have his airtime. And I just watched, I was telling you guys, I watched the Our Lady Peace interview, and I was like, Chad got into drum discussions and things that I earnestly have never heard him talk about. I didn't even know that he knew about, and I've been in a band with him my whole life, but I didn't ask him. Like, I didn't know to ask those questions. But putting two drummers on the show was like, all of a sudden there's a whole different level and layer to the conversation. It's been really refreshing.
It's cool to be a part of.
It's great to have Jason. Jason was awesome. He's an amazing drummer, and he was a great guy. Yeah, I mean, drummers talking drums, man. What do you expect?
Yeah, he lights up. You mentioned the drums. He starts mentioning cherry woods and oak woods and all that jazz. I'm like, holy Testicle Tuesday.
Yeah. So, I mean, we got lots of people making comments already. So, everyone, we, Chad and I, we had a little spat like brothers, but we're mending fences and working on things going forward here. We obviously, I don't know if you've all seen the video. You probably have, with the Lini Shoes on my YouTube.
Yes.
And that was fun to do. I invited him in to do that, and I thought it would be cool for the fans and to show everybody that, hey, we're talking again. So it's a good thing.
Love it. Yo, let's talk about that video, gentlemen. So, one, it sounds absolutely phenomenal. Two, how did it...
put in the notes that Chad mixed that as well, so I got to give him credit for that, and did a great job.
The producer coming out again. I love it.
Guys, I'm just trying to stop the music.
That's right.
Oh, that's right.
That's what you've been accused of, yes.
I'm sorry. If you're not laughing, you're crying, right? So I need to laugh.
Exactly.
And we were told you would never stop the music again. How dare you, Chad?
There was one comment on the YouTube that, why is Chad in your video on green screen?
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
That's people thought it was so bad that you had to green screen him in. That's hysterical.
Yeah, I got the same thing. Somebody sent me a text and he was like, "Were you two actually together?" It's like, no, we were. I swear to God, hand to God, we were in the same room.
Look, no green screen, everybody. He's actually here. This is AI Chad. Sorry.
Yeah,
oh my God, exactly. Imagine. And one day, that's exactly what's going to be going on here. We won't be here, but AIs will be doing our show. So talk to us, guys. How did that video come about, and what was it like being in the studio again together?
Well, I got to give the credit to Chad. He's the one that said, well, actually, it started with, I think originally I told him when we were still not communicating with each other that I'd seen that he'd done one of those drum videos. And you know how like you can stitch the things together? I was going to do a stitch and then repost it with me playing guitar.
Oh.
And he basically was like, well, the hell with that. Why don't you just come in and play?
I
And
love it.
and it really started from there. And then, oh, this is the problem with this strange semi autistic brain of mine.
Sure.
I didn't want to just do what had already been released for Lini Shoes. So what you're hearing is a brand new, never heard before track that is Chris Shinn on vocals, Patrick Dahlhammer on bass, me on guitar, and Chad Gracey on drums. Um, that the through the miracles of mixing techniques and stuff that we were able to bring back and bring to life. So what you're hearing, like when you're watching Chad perform, like that's literally the drums actually in the recording, and my guitars, and then Patrick's bass, and Chris is like on when I say raw vocals, other than putting just a little tiny bit of EQ and compression on them. There's not even a skosh of auto-tune, nothing. That's just his vocals as pure as what they can be, which is insane. Of course, and the mix is really drum heavy because let's be honest, it's a drum video. So we
Yeah.
really wanted the drums to sit super forward in the mix. And I spent an awful lot of time. One of the signature sounds, this is standing next to Chad without earplugs in or anything for so many years of his playing. He has an uncanny ability to play brilliant polyrhythms and ghost notes, in particular with his left hand. If you ever watch any, video of him playing, he does this weird little rotational thing with the drumstick. If you watch it really closely, in between every hit, he rotates his drumstick and rotates and rotates. And somewhere in between those, he's playing these little ghost notes. Well, in the first recording and the first mix, right, you can't hear that as much as what I could hear it standing on stage. And so I've spent a whole bunch of time like trying to make that really stick forward in the mix. And oh man, it's so hypnotic. It's so great. And then Patrick's bass part is the most unconventional bass part, and I know it's so easy to forget, but it is, when I said it, hypnotic. The thing that makes the track feel loping and hypnotic is what Patrick plays on bass. And I think that song, Lakini's, more than any other song, really showcases the elemental aspect of what really made live. Like that, Ed's melody is so incredibly powerful. The drums are just, I mean, so in your face and rhythmic, and they both rock. Like you kind of want to headbang to it, but it also makes you dance. Like
Yeah.
that's kind of a hard thing to do. Like AC/DC is like rock, just straightforward. This does a little bit of that, but has almost like a Purdy shuffle in it. And then, sorry to get all musical there.
No,
and then,
dude, that is like,
yeah,
if I stop you here, will you remember your train of thought?
sure.
Okay. Because just hearing you talk about your music, you could hear how much passion and how much thought you put into it. And this is not an Ed Kowalczyk bashing session, but I don't think he's ever put that much thought into live at all, into the music, because it's just what I'm hearing coming from that side now. It's just nowhere near sonically what you guys once were.
Yeah.
And it's clear that it's because a lot of the passion, i.e., the two people right in this, on this chat right now, are gone.
Yeah.
Well,
And it's kind of
CT
evident
is
by
like
how you talk
CT is
about
like
it.
basically the music theory friggin' professional of live. He always has been.
I think
chord
our
stretchers and-
work, Chad, don't you think our work, I would say our work as musicians, I think in particular Patrick, Gracey, and I, we created The Turn, we created The Gracious Few, and of course all those live albums. And, it's a signature sound. We take it with us wherever we go.
Right.
Yeah.
There was just someone in the comments asking about getting The Turn back on, back out in the universe, and we will be working on that for sure. We're going to get
just
that.
got The Gracious Few not that long ago back out there. Yeah, work on The Turn next.
I wore my Gracious Few hat for all the fans at home. Of course, it's the only hat I wear, and I have a blue flannel and a green flannel. And some people are saying, well, Chad, isn't it like 70 degrees out? But not in my house. It's very cool in my
Right.
house. And this is part of stimming, which I learned. like when I was a kid, Chad might even remember that I used to just shake my legs and stuff all the time.
Mm.
And that's like part of ADHD and some spectral issues that I have. And so like I never knew this, but like my habitual clothing, like I have very like soft things. I can't have anything itchy or scratchy. Like that's all, part of the strangeness that I guess makes me me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, I
Well,
have that
let's
too.
talk
I wonder.
about, let's hold on, John. Sorry
Yeah.
to cut you off. Let's talk about your sobriety, and that's kind of what has brought us to this moment.
Yeah.
I think, that you becoming sober, figuring out whatever flaws you had as being on alcohol has, or whatever you want to call it, has, realizing that and bettering yourself has brought us to this point.
Yeah,
Fair enough.
so it's interesting because I had a really, I say this jokingly, but I had an amazing drinking career. I was a prolific drinker, and always thought, I had that under control, and always thought that what I was doing was normal for a guy of my caliber of musicianship and a rock band, all those things. And it was fully, I want to say, endorsed and tolerated by almost everybody around me. Uh, and mostly because, I was a difficult person to say no to or really even to give advice to. And there's a real turning point. I started like most young people drinking when I was super young. Definitely before I was 18, like middle school age. Funny enough, probably about the time we started the band. And all that was completely normal and regular. But as I grew and I matured, the environment I was in was like the perfect petri dish to breed an alcoholic. And I didn't, I knew that I had some family issues with this. My grandfather on my mother's side was a heavy drinker. And uh, I, it's kind of funny because I'll go all the way to the end and then jump back. But I basically wound up on stage playing a show, and like I don't remember the show.
Oh,
I mean,
sure.
I'm telling you, it was like one of those Scott Weiland-esque. Like, I'm kind of almost surprised that a video hasn't been on the internet. But I was slurring my words, and the next day, the following day, every woman in my life was crying. That was my three daughters, my wife, my mother, some friends and family were like really concerned.
Hmm.
And I think everybody here, you, John, you, Chad, all the fans coming in, they know like my number one love, the thing I love the most is music.
Yeah.
And when I realized, now what's funny, and this is really sad, this is the sad part about alcoholism, I would have probably left it steal away my family. And in fact, it probably almost did several times.
Wow.
But when it came right up to the line of losing music, I was like, well, something needs to change. So I made up my mind the following day. By the way, that was on my birthday. So November 24th, just about 2 years ago now. It's a year and a half ago. Um, I said, that's it. I'm not going to have another drink. The
Wow.
problem is that's just a decision not to drink, right? And I knew, like, so I woke up the next day. I was like, okay, I'm never doing that again. By the way, anybody in this chat or anybody that's ever had a drink, how many times you wake up and you had a hangover, you're like, I'll never do that again. And of course, what do you normally do is you go back to drinking, right?
Yeah.
So the difference was I had Chad and I have a mutual friend, a woman named Lori Wohler. And Lori is a psychologist. And I was talking to her casually. Like she called me, in fact, to just say happy birthday. I was on the phone with her. I said, well, I wound up getting hammered last night, and I think that's it for me. I'm going to stop drinking. She said, well, how serious are you about stopping drinking? And I said, well, I'm really serious. I'm never doing it again. And she said, well, I know that you have a great, constitution. I'm sure that you can pull that off, but most people that don't find a program fail. And then I asked a very difficult question. I said, hold on, you sound like you were waiting for this conversation to happen.
Hmm.
And she said, well, I knew that eventually we would have this
That
conversation.
would be Lori. That would be Lori for sure. Yeah.
And then I said, "Oh shit!" And she said, "Well, do you have any friends that are like in a program or anything? It doesn't particularly have to be AA, but you why don't you call them?" And I said, "Well, I've got this great friend of mine. I know he's in AA." And she said, "Well, hang up the phone with me and call him." And this bud of mine, who I'll let remain anonymous, but I called him on the phone, and I was like, "So I'm thinking about stopping drinking and all these things." And I must have called on a Monday, and the AA meetings that I attend are on Tuesday mornings and Thursday mornings. And he said, "Well, it's weird." He said, "There's an AA meeting tomorrow morning. It's my home meeting. It's at 7:30 a.m. tomorrow." And I took a breath and I started to answer, and I looked down and the phone was dead. He just hung up.
Oh shit. Oh.
And so I was like trapped.
Wow.
And so, and I'm sharing this story for anybody else. I don't hold any judgments to anybody that's dealt with addiction, but I showed up at the first meeting, and the craziest thing, like I was outside at 7:30 a.m. I'm like, what the hell am I doing here? I'm not an alcoholic. I'm fine. And then I just kept on thinking, but you drove all this way to come to the meeting. What are you doing sitting outside? Like, you ought to at least go in. So my secondary impulse was, I'll listen and observe, but I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to really participate.
Hmm.
Sure.
And as this sharing happened around the room, people just started sharing their stories. I didn't know this now, but I know it now. The most important person in the room is their first visit to an AA meeting. Uh, and everybody just started sharing about in particular, the topic of the day was all the rationalizations that people have, like, "Oh, I'll only have 2 glasses of wine at lunch, and I only have martinis at this time of the day, or I only drink beer, not the hard stuff," and all these things. And I'm sitting
I
there
can
going,
have champagne and tequila.
"Yes."
Yeah.
Our boy Patrick.
That's how you cut
that's
the
that's
tequila.
It's one of the most famous stories in the band, but yes, it's true. I can only have champagne and tequila. I got to stick away from the beer. So, but eventually, as they round robin and kind of went around the room, I thought to myself, because I'm a pretty impulsive person. I was like, "Oh, I can either come back for 2 or 3 of these, or just like rip this Band-Aid off right now." And I said, "Hey, my name's Chad Taylor, and I'm an alcoholic." And I said it for the very first time, and
Hmm.
wow, that felt good to even say it again. It felt brand new just then.
Yeah,
But
man.
it's like laying down prostrate and saying, just handing yourself over to the universe.
Yeah.
And so my process was, one, I had to recognize I was powerless to the effects of alcohol. And
Yeah.
that's the first thing they teach you in that program. And that was great. Like, I put down the bottle. I did that. Like, there's a million great songs about putting down the bottle. I did that. But honestly, the biggest difference in my life, and the only reason why I'm here and talking to Chad, was what I recognized was I had this very, 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 very long list of resentments. Every
Hmm.
human I knew in my life was on that list. Every person. My mom, my dad, my brother, probably my sisters, of course, my bandmates, and all my friends. Everybody was on the list. I could tell you all their freaking faults and all the things that they had wrong with them, and that list of resentments was so long. And through the big book and AA, what I recognized is the number one pathway back to drinking, right, is to hold on to those resentments. And after that, that led into forgiveness. So, um, yeah, in my practice, what I believe is that because I prayed for Chad Gracey every single day, that I got him back.
I love it, dude. That
Cheers.
is a touching story, and cheers for sure. It sounds like when you were at that meeting and you were able to say those words for the first time, it was almost like a freeing moment. Like, it was like, I'm here with people. I'm saying this out loud, and there's people around that kind of have been through here, and it almost seems like it was like a freeing moment for you, rather than something like where you were admitting like a fault of yours or something. It seemed like it opened you rather than closed.
Yeah, and the weirdest thing is, and I really do truly mean this, I was literally the last person to know. I picked a day several months into sobriety and called it like Siblings Day, where I was going to admit, my alcoholism to like my brother and my sisters.
Hmm.
And it was really funny, I prepared this like kind of message that I wound up copy and pasting to each of them. And I full blown expected that they write back and say like, "Who, you? Oh my God." But they were like, it was almost like everybody wrote back and said, "Yeah, it's like about time."
Wow.
And I thought, holy shit, I'm the last guy to know. And of course, John, you've had the great honor of getting to know my good bud Chad, but we spent a lifetime together, and for much of that lifetime, Chad was in a band with an alcoholic. So, that's a big problematic thing.
Yeah, for sure.
It caused more problems in our band than what I would have really recognized. Do you think it was easy on Ed, Chad, or Patrick to be in a band where I'm sure quietly that they were concerned about me?
I was just gonna say, Chad, did you
There were
Chad Gracey?
periods where I was, but it's always seemed like, I mean, there were periods where he would drink more than usual, and then he would kind of cut back, and so there were periods where I could say I was concerned.
But you were chalking most of it up to just rock star lifehood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never perceived there to be like a problem, but or I would have said something. It just felt like, oh, yeah, he's getting a little drunk, and then it would be okay for a while. So, I mean,
Right.
Patrick was, he's self-admitted alcoholic too, but Patrick was much more like shit-faced drunk than Chad would have his moments like that, but Patrick was more consistent with it. And then Patrick kind of cleaned himself up, and he had his own path to that, to doing that. But that's where the famous "I can have champagne and tequila." That was one of his
famous lines.
One of it where he got sober and then came back and was like, "I can have champagne." Let's put champagne back on the rider for me. We're like, okay. And, we're just kind of thinking, well, he's a big boy. And then one day we showed up to a gig in South Carolina, and he just goes up to the bar and he's like, "I can have champagne and tequila." We're like, okay, you got this.
Love it.
And what's weird about our group, it wasn't like one of us said, "Yeah, no, that's not a good idea."
Yeah, we might have all been thinking it, but we're just like, well, he's a big boy. I guess he knows what he's doing,
And I have to say something here that's like really an admission in this moment. Have you ever seen one of those hostage scenes where the hostage taker puts the person in front of them and it shields them and protects them?
Is this like the Stockholm syndrome?
Patrick was my hostage. I put Patrick out in front of me, it'd be like, well, look at Patrick, he's wasted.
Right.
I got it.
You wouldn't pay attention to me.
Right.
As long as I had somebody else in the bunch that was just a little bit more fucked up than me, then you wouldn't notice me. And
you're calculated.
Well, every alcoholic is.
Yeah.
And that's probably an interesting thing to really disclose even about myself, is that the drinking has a lot to do with an incredibly hyperactive brain. I've learned so much about myself through things that I would have never investigated through sobriety. And for example, just even my relationship with music, all of a sudden I realized, well, part of my soothing was to play the guitar. That was like a major, major factor, right? So the thing that made me feel whole, made me feel comfortable and normal away from the bottle was music. And then imagine if the people and the relationships that you were making music with, if there was toxicity within those relationships, and then suddenly playing music started to also feel toxic, well, then the only escape for me was the bottle.
Yeah.
Then it became the bottle. And I tried, guys, so desperately to be a good husband and a good father. But I look back on that, and, the people that I impacted the most, I mean, God bless my bandmates, but my wife and children, I mean, I put them through hell. And when the tour ended and I went home, I was still that guy. And it got pretty bad, even to the point, actually, on tour, I had handlers. At home, I don't have handlers, right? So when I started, waking up in my driveway with my car still running and the sun was coming up, and I was just trying to figure out how the hell I got home, I recognized, that's probably not a very good trait.
Yeah.
And I share this stuff openly, by the way. AA is an anonymous program, but I share it openly because one of the things I recognized was, I was like, I want accountability globally. I don't want to be the guy that's like, I snuck off to South Africa and I'm in a bar and squirreled away having a drink. Part of being open and having a platform like this is somebody would probably walk over to me and be like, I don't think you're supposed to be here.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I'm glad you did that, dude. You said something that I want to touch on is that, like a lot of people in your life, maybe saw this going on and didn't kind of say anything to you. And I think that happens a lot in the entertainment community, speaking specifically like Kurt Cobain, for instance. Everybody knew he was a raging heroin addict and nobody stepped in to try to say, hey, dude, maybe you should stop this before it gets crazy and just kind of let that stuff go on and snowball. And it
What
seems
we
like
do
it's
and
a theme.
yeah, what we do on being on the road, it is a conducive environment for it because you can get whatever you want. Everyone's saying yes to you. If you're in a band like we were or we are, whatever, it's you have handlers like Chad said, and their job is to make you happy. So whatever you fucking ask for, they will go get. I mean, from alcohol all the way down to like the most serious drugs. Not that we ever did that kind of stuff, but they'll go get you. They'll go score you heroin. They're like, someone will go fucking do it if you ask for it. Like, and so it's just a whole environment of whatever you guys need to be happy, to get on stage. Just keep them on stage, keep them happy.
Whatever it takes you to take those feelings and bury them down deep inside and never let them up.
And just get on stage and make everybody money. That's the environment you're in. Yeah, the machine. They don't want to stop that from going on. A bunch of comments here. Chad, Taylor, they want to know, I'll put it up on the screen here, how inebriated you were when you jumped off stage. Chad brought this up, I think, last Tuesday. You went off stage and like this concert had to stop.
Yeah. I was probably 3/4 of the way through a bottle of Jack Daniels. That was the gracious few routine. I would always take a bottle of Jack. I mean, I learned this from like a guy that I consider a father figure, and he'll be mad that I'm telling the story, but he learned it from Led Zeppelin, okay? They would take a bottle of Jack Daniels and they would just slightly crack the top, and then they would hit the top of the bottle and the cap would go flying. Because the point was you didn't need the cap because, the bottle was going to get finished.
Oh,
and
wow.
So I do that before every show, and I would nip at the bottle just direct, because why would you want to mess with ice or something? And then I walk on stage and I just sit that back on my guitar amp and like drink. And we were at the Double Door in Chicago with the Gracious Few, and we were at the last song of the set. And by the way, I had enough self-control to basically always be able to play a pretty good show. And but knowing that we were coming towards the end of the set, I was probably starting to pour on heavier.
Yeah.
Looking for the after show effect.
For sure.
And to be fair to anybody that ever wonders, I didn't like fall off the stage or anything. I told fans at the front, because I came up with a harebrained scheme right in the middle of the song, that I was going to jump into the crowd. And I told them to like move. And I jumped from, I just need to preface this and say I was in cowboy boots.
Oh, wow.
I jumped
Slippery
from
ass.
a stage that was about shoulder height from the stage down onto the floor. And it was a, like solid wood floor. And when I hit, I think that the angle of boot it instantly severed my quad tendon.
Oof.
And I fell down on the ground. And I will say this, bizarrely, I'm happy I had about half a bottle of Jack Daniels in me not to feel the pain.
Yeah, that helped.
Yeah, it was crazy. But the crazier part of all that is that I finished the tour.
You finished the tour after that?
You did finish the tour, yeah.
Wow, man.
The fucking blown out knee.
You must have definitely had some Jack Daniels helping you there.
Well, and then at that point, that was Jack Daniels and then painkillers all at the same time. I was suddenly Johnny Cash. Like
dangerous combo.
Yeah, really not healthy. And then actually, it's kind of funny because at the end of that tour, I know it was around Christmas time that I had to come home and get surgery. And really, that has a lot to do with the end of the Gracious Few. I had to go in and get surgery, and then you have to have your leg and an exoskeleton and all this stuff because it's a quad tendon. It's the largest muscle in your body, and they had to reattach it.
Damn.
And Kevin Martin called me up and said, "Dude, while you're recovering, right? I owe the record label a Candlebox album. I want to make a Candlebox album." And I kind of knew at that point. I was like, "Well, we'll never come back to the Gracious Few because." He'll have to tour in support of Candlebox and tour in support of an album. And just knowing that, oh my God, did my depression, and you think like, oh, well, that's when you would get sober. No, it was like way worse. I couldn't work. I couldn't do
Right.
the thing that I love to do. Uh, the Gracious Few was not the most financially responsible thing Chad or I ever did, or Chad, Patrick, and I ever did. And, as that was kind of coming to a close, I was like, God, what am I going to do? There was no live, there was no ed. We never even contemplated doing that. I was kind of like laying in my bed thinking, well, like, how the hell did I wind up here? And I mean,
Right.
anybody who would listen to the story would know, well, geez, all that drinking probably didn't help. But I'm telling you, like, first of all, psychologically, I never dealt with Ed leaving the band. When Ed left the band in 2009, and then we started the Gracious Few and all those things, Chad Gracey gets all the credit for the Gracious Few, because I told both Chad and Patrick, that's it, I'm never doing music again. Bad touch, bad feeling, don't want anything to do with it. And Gracie kept calling me, dude, what are you doing? What are you doing? We need songs. We got to get in a room. We got to play. And, we got in a room, and the first song that we put together was Honest Man. And it was
Listen, that was before live ended, though, because we made Honest
That's
Man,
right.
and then Ed came up with Believe, and
Believe.
we were like, okay.
So let me ask you this. This is a good point. So Honest Man was more the vision you guys saw for that song rather than Believe.
We wrote the music to it, and then that's what Ed came up with, and we were just kind of like, we played it once in concert. It was, lackluster, and then Kevin got a hold of it. It was like, holy shit, that's badass.
Yeah, there's just a big difference. Like, you could definitely hear like the bulk of the song in Believe and Honest Man are the same, but yeah, the mixed, I guess, the different takes from the two lead singers, and just the Honest Man sounded harder when you heard it. Like, it just had a grunge sound to it.
Well, we only made a demo of it that Ed sang to, so we didn't, go.
I just heard a concert version. I don't think I ever heard even a studio.
That's the only time we played it out live at some casino. But yeah, anyway, it was.
Gotcha. Somebody said, were they talking about this for Chad Taylor, that the Asbury Park was the show you fell?
No, it was Chicago. I don't know. I respectfully, Justin, it was Chicago.
Unless he fell off another time.
Right. Maybe he fell down at that show, but he didn't jump off the stage and sever.
Trust me, I remember when my quad tendon got severed.
Yeah, because he went to the emergency. He had to go to the emergency room in fucking downtown Chicago that night. We were just like, is he going to die in the emergency room from gunshots?
Yeah. Oh, this is great. Somebody just wrote, what do you think of the similarities of Honest Man and Blow by Ed Sheeran?
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's right. That's right.
It's pretty funny. I may have signed an agreement that said that I can't talk about that.
Right.
I didn't hear this song. Is there strong similarities? Oh wait, so you just said you can't talk about it. Holy, I want to say
that. I want to say this. We may have written that.
Ah, all right. So you heard that here, folks.
Yeah.
Mr. Troy Garman says, how hard was it for CT to just go along with the Ed stuff when it was obvious the direction of the band was changing?
Well, this is I think a good time to put up that chart that. And then we can talk about this.
Let's go.
See the chart. Go to the chart.
Bring up the chart. Here we go.
Now I need a pointer.
Well, if you can you see my mouse? Does it work or no? No,
not really. So the blue line, as we see here. Oh, Chad, you want to do this, or you want me to do it?
No, I like you doing it. You're doing a great job.
So the blue line represents album sales for live. Okay. The red dotted line represents Ed's amount of ownership in the songwriting. So as you see, the more he owned in the songwriting or claimed in the songwriting, the less successful we were. And that's the chart.
And sorry, I was moving that chart around while you were doing that. I was trying to get the best portrait up there. Yeah.
The point is that don't lie. I mean,
I once heard it said that numbers don't lie.
No, numbers don't lie.
Yeah.
And I also want to say that what we've Chad and I have basically through discussion of the past and what's going on and presently, we just figured out that Patrick, Chad, and I were always about live. Ed was always about Ed. And maybe that was Ed in live, but he was all about himself. We were about the collective. We were about getting in a room, writing songs together, doing it old school. The way we did it, the way we wrote, had the most success as a band is obvious on that chart. We were in a room hashing out the songs. Someone would bring an idea like Selling Drama, or Ed brings in I Alone, and we get in there and we fucking put it together and it becomes a live song because the four of us are working on it. Or conversely, I was the guy for a long time. I'd be like, I don't like that idea. I just don't even want to play it. So, and at some point I got tired of being the dick. So I just stopped doing that as well. But that kind of coincided with when Ed came to you, Chad, and just said, I don't want to write to your ideas anymore. And that was around about Distance to Here, right? Right after Distance to Here.
Yeah, it was about, so Peter Friedman passed away in 2003.
Right.
And that's pretty much the beginning of the end of the collaborative period. Funny enough, when we collaborate, it's a magic that's insane. How I would describe it to people that, wonder how a band comes together and all these things. If you've ever tried to bake anything, baking is like a very, very exact process. And so at the age of 15, we had 4 distinct ingredients: a Chad Gracey ingredient, a Patrick Dahlheimer ingredient, an Ed Kowalczyk ingredient, and a Chad Taylor ingredient. And we threw them in a baking dish and we put it in the oven at 350, and it came out a fucking perfect cake. And what you don't do is ever fuck with that recipe. You don't change the recipe.
Yep.
Yeah, agreed.
Coke, new Coke, whatever it is, don't change the fucking recipe. The recipe of live was one of collaboration.
Yep. Oh yeah, you two.
Not one person was more important. Oh yeah, Chad brought in this song, or Ed brought in this song. Who fucking cares? What really mattered was the collective.
Yeah, and you have bands like U2 and Metallica, like they're all collaborative. You've seen documentaries of them working. Have you ever seen a Bono solo tour or a James Hetfield solo tour? No.
Right.
Because they understood what the collective was. And that's what made it great. Not just your lyrics and melody, like, oh, I'm so fucking great. Oh, everyone's singing my shit. So
right. And somebody, it's kind of funny because somebody just said, oh, I'm sure Ed will love this podcast. No, like, Ed's one of the ingredients.
Exactly.
Right. Like, when I say legitimately that I pray for Chad Gracey, for Patrick Dahlheimer, I equally pray for Ed. I don't hold that part of that alcoholism thing, right, is to find a way into forgiveness. Like, even forgiveness for, like, I don't know, who cares if Ed, like, was in it just for himself? Like, kind of who cares? But I wish he could just give enough to, like, take those ingredients and put them back in that pan, because, like, damn it, like, we make really great cake. I think that's a song too.
Yeah, make good cake. Make good cake. Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, and I discussed this with Chad as well. Like, I'm perfectly willing, and we are. All three of us are good. Ed's a great lyricist, great melodies. He's done great things, but he doesn't want to give that same respect back to us, and I don't understand why.
It's crazy. So I mean, I think it just goes back to when you guys broke up originally in 2009. Either whatever happened between there and 2016, it got in his head, and he would, like, I think he had it in his head to just get back in and fuck you guys, like, from the beginning. I don't think the 2016 reunion was genuine on his part. I think it was almost like, I'm gonna figure out a way to get creative control back from these guys and fuck them or something, because it doesn't add up to me for some reason. And you're right, the ingredients, the four of you together, but you guys really, the three of you kind of did those ingredients in The Turn and The Gracious Few, and I'm gonna put those albums right up against your earlier records, man. Those are some fucking banging records.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, the ingredients, it definitely, it's magic when all four of you are in the group, but it's really the three of you guys together making some special shit as well.
But so
So
John, what you're talking about there is interesting enough. It's called first aid.
yes,
So in 1985,
Mm-hmm.
and I write about this extensively in my book. In 1985, when the band was literally only Chad Gracey, Patrick Dahlheimer, and myself, and we played the middle school talent show. Um, y- there's nothing like being that young and naive and utterly innocent.
yeah,
No one's like there couldn't be an ego because like we were scared to death to play in front of our entire student body, you know. And then this incredible like rise of like teenage girls screaming like
yeah,
you hear at the Beatles concerts because I mean there's just something about that. I just remember I think Gracie was wearing this like really cool Benetton sweater that he had gotten.
Probably.
Patrick was dressed in like he had on some super cool white T-shirt and like a almost like a James Dean kind of effect with his blue jean jacket. And I had gone out and I had bought because Hall and Oates I think at the time wore them, but like a skinny tie. Because I thought that'd be really cool. So I had a skinny tie, and we played two songs. We started the show, which was Chad Gracey's idea, with a U2 song called "Like a Song,"
Mm-hmm.
and it's roughly 149 beats per minute, which, by the way, is pretty smoking fast. Uh, and Gracie started the whole thing like they said, "Ladies and gentlemen, first aid," and they parted the curtains, and we were just standing there, And the very first thing the world ever heard from any of us was his kick drum. Boom, 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 boom.
yo. So
So true.
this theme of Gracie starting off songs on drums started way back then because like "Pain Lies on the Riverside" is a drum intro that happened. So this started like from your first performance ever.
Yeah.
Wow, that's
Also, some
dope.
people are asking about the book in the comments here. The book is not out yet. He has written the book. He is shopping the book. Is that fair enough, Chad? Yeah.
That's a fair enough thing to say. I just finished my second draft. Actually, it's funny because that's also a little bit of part of the sober journey. When I wrote the first draft of the book, I was still drinking. And I told all these like insane stories about, as anybody can imagine, little of, you add millions of dollars into guys in their early 20s. It was pretty insane.
Sure.
And, so I tried to like write about it and try to remember it. The reason why I created the timeline of the chronology of the band, which is like 3,000 separate line items, was to spark my memory so I could just remember what the hell to write about. And that includes like, I went back to all this archival footage of news articles. It's very interesting because most of Live that was built in the time period pre-internet. So you had to
Mm-hmm.
go back, and I had to use like you talked about microfilm and all those things. So I got all the old articles on the band because it was I never read that stuff at the time, because you didn't have a mobile phone and it wasn't
Yeah.
posted on the internet. When you left the town and they wrote an article about you, you never saw it.
Right.
Like we just left. So I wanted to read all that stuff and see what was going on. So anyway, my point was I wrote this first draft and I kind of like laughingly wrote about really all my just like I don't want to call it deplorable behavior, but what I would consider as a sober guy now unacceptable. And then I got sober, and then I waited like I don't know what it was, almost a year before like revisiting a redraft. I needed time away from it.
Sure.
And then I started reading it, in order to revise. And I was like, yo, like, this is problematic behavior. Like, I started making notes. And I swear to you that part of the cathartic process of doing that, like, I almost tell everybody, you ought to write down the story of your life. Like, it suddenly hit me. I was like, wow, there are key relationships in my life that, I've pushed away from me. Anybody that's been through the AA process knows that there's also, part of that is like reconciliation and taking ownership for your flaws, your cracks, your crevices. And boy, I made a list and I had tiers of like first offender, like where I was the worst to, and I tried to call those people. And then I had a second tier and a third tier, and I'm actually over into the third tier, which even involves like we had a manager for the Gracious Few. Oh my God, incredible lady named Deb Klein. She manages Melissa Etheridge now. Just awesome lady. And like I'm pretty sure I fired her by like literally just ghosting her. Like I just like goodbye. Like only a drunk
Yeah.
would do that. Only
Yeah.
only an alcoholic, egomaniac, self-serving, whatever guy would do something like that. So I had to call her up, and she said, I never expected to hear from you again in my whole life. And I just told her, I don't want anything out of the phone call. I just want to say, like that was really a dick move, and I'm so sorry. I got to tell you, there's probably people out there. I actually noticed somebody that I know from our childhood wrote that I was like an asshole to somebody at a show. I don't want to say their names or out them, but I probably was. That's the reality. And the only thing I can do to probably make most of those things better is to like heal myself and then just be a better person in general.
Well said. And well, and way to take accountability for things, and that shows how kind of honest you're being right now. I saw that comment up there. I'm like, I'm going to leave this off because I don't want to bring up negative stuff to the show, and you brought it up, so it just shows how much accountability you're taking for some of those
But
paths.
I want to tell a cool story about that person. Screw it, I'll just say it now. So the person's name is Katie Carlson. And if you ever watched WKRP in Cincinnati, there was the station manager was a guy named Arthur Carlson, and her father was Art Carlson, and he lived in York, Pennsylvania. And that character on that show was actually was based on his name, not really on him as a person. But we played Katie Carlson's Sweet 16 party. And I'm pretty sure Mr. Carlson is the guy that actually paid us to do the performance. And we were just public affection then. And I also remember that we used her little teenage bedroom as our dressing room. So
Sorry.
like
Nice.
I still have like really fond and sweet memories of these people too. I don't exactly know what I did to be an asshole, but oh my God, I hope that's not true, but it probably is.
Well, and Katie is not with us anymore, unfortunately.
Holy shit.
Rest
You
in
didn't know
peace.
she passed away?
I
Yeah.
didn't know that, Chad.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
A couple of years ago, Jody
Dude,
Bradford told me. Yeah. Jody Bradford still communicates with me once in a while. Jody Bradford was Katie's best friend back in those days, and I think they remained friends until she passed. But yeah.
oh my
2
God.
years.
Wow.
Well, I was feeling bad before. Now I'm really down there.
Well, I'm sorry.
Well, that's why it was brought up. Rest in peace.
Yeah, I was
Yes,
wanting to take
rest in
time to
peace.
respect it.
Yes.
CT. So, getting back to that 8th grade talent show. So, how long before that did you pick up the guitar, and kind of what made you do that?
Well, I was 10 years old when Santa Claus, underneath the Christmas tree at my father's house, brought me a 1978 Gibson Les Paul Standard, and I had been asking Santa Claus for drums, and but I did really feel I liked Peter Criss from Kiss, but I did feel like really honored that like I had this like beautiful, like you should have seen like how fancy this guitar looked. I mean, it was insane. And that is not a starter guitar for anybody that knows anything about instruments. That's like a really advanced instrument. So
Yeah.
and my dad had always told me, he said, I got you a serious guitar because I wanted you to be a serious guitarist, a serious musician. And I started taking lessons at some point after then. Like the Mrs. Eppiheimer was her name, and I quickly figured out that Mrs. Eppiheimer could teach me like Mary Had a Little Lamb, but she couldn't teach me rock and roll songs. And so I enlisted the help of a man named Don Carn, and Don Carn was Chad, Patrick, and I, our middle school band instructor. And I started taking private guitar lessons from Mr. Carn after school hours at his apartment on Duke Street in York. And that is also the very first place, that apartment is the very first place Chad, Patrick, and I ever played together.
Oh, wow.
Yep, that's true. Yeah, that's right.
So we owe the
By
world
the way,
owes.
will you put up Jody Bradford's comment? Because she's watching chat.
Yes, sir.
Let's talk about Katie Carlson. So,
Oh yeah.
Thank you, Jody.
Thank you, Jody. Hi. God, it shows you. This is the problem with life. Everybody gets, busy living life and doing all this stuff, and life does fly by. Interesting enough, I this is kind of like a running joke that's going on, but I had posted a couple weeks ago about a very dear friend of ours named Jimmy Lang that was involved with SurfNet and creating Live's very first website and stuff. And Jimmy suffered a stroke while in Brazil. And Jimmy and I have a long history of sharing just like really super funny things with each other. And so every year for my birthday, he sends me a picture of himself. And
perfect.
if I could take
That's
this
great.
computer and move right now next to like literally my bedside stand facing me are two photographs of Jimmy. And I wake up every day and I think about the guy, and I wish his health to get better and get well. And then just on like the health front, my sister-in-law had stage 5 kidney failure. This is acute, sudden kidney failure that we recognize now as chronic.
Jeez.
And I would be remiss without saying that she has a GoFundMe page that's
Yes.
up. I would ask anybody, we'll try and share it. I know I shared it
Yeah,
on
we
my
will.
Facebook page.
And for all the live fans, this is Matt Gracey's wife.
Yes.
Let's
Thank you,
make
Chad.
that apparent. Yes.
And your cousin.
Well, of course.
Your
yes.
cousin's wife. Yeah.
Yeah, that too.
But yeah, please
We'll
go
post
support
it.
them.
And we'll post that link in the description of this episode after it airs for sure. Gentlemen, now that we got real sad for a second, let's get back to good times here and how you three started the band First Aid and got to that talent show. Like, how did that come about? How did you guys know you played instruments, and how did you guys get together?
He just basically told you the story. Don Karn put us together, our music teacher.
Oh, I thought that you guys just like practiced there afterwards. I didn't realize like he set you up originally. I thought there was like you guys went and practiced there afterwards. Okay, never mind then.
He basically knew I was playing drums and he was giving guitar lessons and bass lessons to Patrick and Chad. And he's like, you guys should play. I mean, we knew each other. We were in the concert bands and stuff together. I played saxophone and Chad was playing trumpet. And I've always said Patrick is the most talented musician in the band because he can play anything. But anyway, so Don Karn is the one who said, hey, man, you guys should be in a band together. That's how we ended up in his house practicing.
Aha. I too have ADHD, Chad, so don't mind if things go over my head during the conversation.
That's all right. That's okay.
It's bound to happen. All right, so shout out Mr. Karn. Thank you for
Mr. Aaron Sheasley's on here. What's up, Aaron? He's saying
Hi,
Don
Aaron.
Karn is retiring this year at the end of the school year. Wow.
Still teaching this gentleman.
Still teaching, retiring this year. That's amazing.
I have several times the Academy of Music has a Teachers in Music Award, and I've nominated Don Karn several times. And I mean, obviously, my nominations haven't gone through, but it'd be interesting if we get a write-in campaign for Don Karn. If anybody I know should have a Grammy award, it should be Don.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely.
100. And I'm sure the Central Pennsylvania Rock and Roll Hall of Fame has honored this gentleman. Remember the people we had on, Chad, from earlier? They gave your band the award. Mm-hmm. They should have him. They should give him an award for sure.
Oh, Don, absolutely, yeah.
Mr. Taylor, so I know U2 was a big musical influence on not just you, but the whole band in general, but what were some of your personal musical influences when you were younger?
I was pretty much steeped in what today you would call classic rock, but stuff that leaned blues oriented. So like I was the guy in the band listening to ZZ Top, like I was listening to Cream. I loved Led Zeppelin. The Beatles and the Beach Boys probably even came somewhat a little bit later in life. Oh my God, the Rolling Stones.
Yeah.
The Stones are probably my favorite band. And I was, I was a strange guy. I loved like the Motown songs. Like I just couldn't get around the songwriting that was on most of the early Motown records, and that was probably my mom's influence. She was really R&B heavy, and my father's influence would have been, blues, classic rock. I did listen to some stuff that veered towards metal, like I love AC/DC. That's like a really classic band. And what's funny is what I've learned over time is I always gravitated towards bands that had fantastic rhythm guitar players. And it's weird because that's what I really consider myself as a rhythm guitar player. I'm not, I mean, I certainly can play leads that nobody else can play, but it's just because I'm so naturally awkward that somehow something that whatever comes out to me, people go, well, that's really hard or something. But to me, it's very easy and very natural.
You consider yourself a rhythm guitarist?
Yes, for sure.
Wow.
And first and foremost, what I want to say is that the reason why I would say that, and I really focused a lot on this on uh, the Gracious Few, as part of the reason why we brought in Sean Hennessy was just my forte has always been songwriting. Like that's where I want to manifest the song, and then I want to serve the song, whatever that means. There's a great moment in the Lini Shoes video where I almost mistakenly play in a part where there's no guitar, and I fortunately like I just muted the guitar at the very last second, and if you watch, you're like I'm smiling because I was like, oh yeah, there's no guitar in there. I got to just chill out. But like for example, it's like be self-serving, like or I'm sorry, serve the song. Don't be self-serving. So even if that meant don't play, that's the role I would take.
Aha. Yes. Serving the music is the key. I want to get into the songwriting thing because, and I also want to say that I think I was unfair to you in the past when I was kind of making some comments on this. Let's get into some of the songwriting for your earlier albums, like Mental Jewelry and Throwing Copper, and kind of walk us through the process on how that went. If you want to start with a song, or just kind of tell us, on a, if you want to go whole album, whatever, however you want to go about it. But let's dive into how you guys wrote some music back in the day.
Well, I think where I would start is sort of an interesting thing. When we were still public affection and in high school, uh, we basically knew right away that if we were going to have a career as musicians, as in particular as a band, that we were going to have to write original songs. And this is definitely a time period where almost all of the early ideas, in batch were coming out of Ed. He was just like writing song after song, and we were trying to arrange them and trying to add our instruments into it. And we didn't really say this publicly yet, but we were all like, we didn't want to go to college. We wanted a career as a band. We were loving making music, and there was some stress because of that. And like stress, what I mean by stress is like, well, what are we going to do for the rest of our lives? And like, we don't want to break this up.
Right.
And we also didn't want to be forthright with our parents or even our peers, our friends. It was like a very closely held secret that this was our desire. And so Ed had come to me in confidence at some point and said, this is too much to put all on my shoulders. Like you have to write too. He was basically telling me step up to the plate.
Right.
And I remember at the time being like, I don't know how to write a song. I'm not a songwriter. I don't even know, like, I don't even know how you do what you do. I think I barely knew how to play the damn guitar at the time, let alone write a song.
Right.
And I mean, I think the very first example that you can find of something where something was birthed from me and came out and came into the world is a song on the Death Dictionary called Savior for a Day. Oddly, it's the very first song on the Death Dictionary. And Ed, we got in a room with this little guitar part. I had an A section, a B section, and something that felt like a chorus. And this was Chad's point earlier, just from that very de minimis small idea, some confluence of chords that flowed one into the other. we started to jam and we started to build. And it was obviously a song that was important enough that like it came first on the cassette tape.
Yeah.
And even then, I didn't realize that like I was a songwriter. Like it didn't feel like it was just like a band jam to me. I didn't recognize that that was a song. And then probably the most pivotal moment, and I know I've told this story before, but it's so important, is as we progressed as songwriters, I was in Chad Gracey's parents' garage on Newberry Street, and we had built this deck where we practiced. All the equipment was stored below the deck. The band practiced up on the deck. And I showed up to rehearsal early, and I was just playing two chords. I guess there's a passing chord technically in the middle, but essentially a two-chord progression. It's just something I thought sounded neat, and I was playing it over and over again. And next thing you know, the garage door goes up, and Ed walks in, and I stopped playing to say hi, and he was like, "No, no, 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 keep playing that." And it eventually, within probably 15 minutes, turned into Operation Spirit.
Wow.
So like even then I didn't know I was being a songwriter. I was just playing chords, you know. So whatever, I was in touch with my instrument. I was in the like I had done all the prep work. Like I
Yeah.
cleared my head. I had like done all these things to like just be present at practice. And the chords just started flowing. And then Chad and Patrick showed up to like start rehearsal, and rather than like work on whatever else we had done, it was like, well, here's this brand new thing. There's suddenly some formation of what a verse sounded like, some formation of a chorus, and we put together all the parts. And I mean, honestly, with something like that, I would probably say from its inception in the beginning until it found some form like what you hear it on the record was probably an hour max.
Yeah,
Wow.
that was one of the quick ones.
Jam, 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 and everything's coming through. And then this also tells you how much I didn't understand my role as a writer or a creator. So we get this record deal. We get to go off to Milwaukee and record with Jerry Harrison. And I was coming up with a list of songs for Jerry that we would have to record. And our manager at the time, David Sestek, today's his birthday, by the way. Happy birthday, David.
Happy birthday,
Happy
David.
birthday.
But I had written this list and faxed it to him to just give you by date and time. I sent him a fax of the list, and he like called me immediately. He was like, "Where's Operation Spirit?" I said, "Oh, we don't want to record that song." I was like, "That's old."
Wow.
Like that's just too old. Like you know, too many people have heard that or something. And it was pretty crazy because I recognized then that like you know, and I fought that process. We played it for Jerry, and then we recorded it. And of course, it became the first single off of Mental Jewelry.
Two for two.
2 for 2.
Rock
And then
on.
we'll go into like so. Even then, you know, like on Mental Jewelry, I know "Tired of Me" is a song. When I say this, like when I say I birthed it, like it's a song that came through the universe into me. I believe it was already there. I prepared my spiritual antenna, and it came to me. I know like "Tired of Me" is on there. There's "Brothers Unaware" would be another song
Fuck yeah.
on the Mental Jewelry record. "Good Pain" is another one. And then, so as we were going forward, right, suddenly like this thing where Ed earnestly encouraged me, brought me along, just
Yeah.
like I brought him along playing guitar, which is a weird thing. Like we were trading off ideas, as innocent as could be. There was, as far as I'm concerned, there was no head and there was no tail. It was just all for one.
Right.
And then Chad and Patrick, mind you, if you listen to Operation Spirit, what drives that song is the bass and drums. The guitar doesn't drive that song. I would even argue that the vocal doesn't drive the song. What drives the song forward and makes it interesting is what the bass and drums played. You know, so this is what I was talking earlier about the collaborative, right?
Yeah.
That's what was so special. Like I'm still telling you, had it just been Ed and I in the room and we finished, you know, writing what you would consider is the foundational elements of the song, and Chad and Patrick hadn't played on it, I'm telling you right now, it's not a hit song.
Yeah.
And then, but Operation Spirit did become a hit. Buzzbin, MTV Buzzbin added it into rotation. And, you know, suddenly, you know, we were on 120 minutes. and the band got global recognition off of that first single. And there starts the problem in our band, right? I had an outside, a very famous Grammy Award winning producer that said to me, the problem with Live is that you wrote many of the seminal songs. And I said, well, no, we worked as a collective and all those things, I did it. And he said, well, no, I don't mean it like that. But imagine if it's not Live and it's Nirvana and Dave Grohl writes Smells Like Teen Spirit.
Right.
How different is the feeling in that band?
Yeah.
It's like a totally different band. It's not Kurt Cobain's band where he presented his songs and then they built arrangements around it. Well,
Right.
I was a teenager. I mean, I don't know. We were 18, 19-year-old kids. I didn't know shit. I didn't know anything. And then the next album, right, going forward, the next album, I was living at an apartment in York with my soon-to-be bride. Like, I know we were engaged. And I'm not joking. I wrote, and I stopped. And I was like, holy shit, that's a hit. I never felt like anything like that in my life. I literally, my wife was just getting out of the shower to get ready to go to work. And I walked in, I was like, I gotta go. I'm driving to Lancaster. I'm driving to Ed's house right now. And remember, back then, I had the most basic tape recorder to hit record, but there wasn't today you would just record it on an iPhone.
Yeah.
Right.
What I was fearful of was that I would forget it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That it would just get lost in the ether. So the whole drive, it takes 30 or 40 minutes. It probably only took me 20 minutes on that day to get from York to Lancaster. And the whole time I was singing in my head, don't forget that. Don't forget it. Don't forget it. I had stuff in my guitar. And Ed at the time had an apartment in a barn. It was on the lower floor of a barn.
The coal stove.
It's I don't know, 10 a.m. Dum. Opens the door. I think he was in his boxer shorts. He's like, what do you want? I'm like, dude, listen to this. And I'm not joking. It's the only song in Live's history where he had grabbed his guitar and he was sitting directly across from me. And I played, and he went, wrong. He hit the next chord. I literally played the B minor 7, not to get into the music thing. And then we both magically hit this C chord right at the back end of the thing. And it was I don't know, one of those teenage kid movies where you're like, I don't know, did we just become best friends?
Yes.
Holy shit. We knew, I'm telling you, we fucking knew in the moment, we were like, holy shit, don't forget this. Ed started writing lyrics so fast, almost to this day, what is there. And then we started to write, and it was Ed's idea, the progression that goes into that today we would call a pre-chorus. And I didn't even look at his hand to see what chords he was playing, but I just started playing automatically the rising guitar part. And we hit a thing. I was like, we're right there. And then it was chorus instantly. I would probably say it was an hour process, front to back. I have chills all over me right now remembering doing it. It was so magical. It was insane. And then, of course, it's call the boys, get the boys in the, you hear all these stories about, guys saying Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young or whatever, they wrote Ohio, wherever they're book the studio. Yep. Well, we didn't have the money to do that, but it was call the guys, get them in the rehearsal room. We got to put this together. We knew. And then, of course, for Live, the record label, I didn't pick the singles. The record label was Selling the Drums, the first single on Throwing Copper. Mm-hmm. And it went straight up the charts and it went to number 1. Boom. So now I'm 3 for 3. Yeah. I got Savior for a Day. I got Operation Spirit. I got Selling the Drama. We're creating a trend. And then we complete the trend, of course, with Lini's Juice and Secret Samadhi. So, and that song debuted at number 1. The album debuted at number 1. We launched the whole record with Saturday Night Live, all those things. Yeah. Well, there are no, I got to stay humble to the whole process because I'm just one little tiny piece of it. But the band's career arc is a totally different career arc without those first seminal songs.
Yes.
That's true.
Yes.
Mhm.
That was I've spoken to Chad Gracey about this a bunch of times. Like that beginning of Selling the Drama is so iconic. Of course, it's not the whole song, but it's such a huge part of that song that to me, who comes up with that part is the songwriter. And then when you describe the rest of it, it does seem very collaborative between you and Ed getting the initial part down, and then the other two guys coming in at the end and really getting it, fleshed out and made into a complete song.
One of the things about that process is I was concerned about WE, always.
Yeah.
What's the we? What does
Mhm.
the band do? How does the band sound? How
Right.
do we bring this together? And then, of course, on the Throwing Copper record, that's an interesting record because the iconic show opener, album opener is Damn It Otter Creek. And that song came about. We had rented this rehearsal space in downtown Lancaster. It was on the second floor above a a tiny little futon shop
Right.
that today is a coffee shop. And I'm sure that many of the people that go into the coffee shop have no idea that most of the songs for Throwing Copper were put together there. But Ed told me that there was a Sunoco station, like catty corner, kind of from the rehearsal space in downtown Lancaster, and he said that he was going to go get a gallon of water. And I had just bought this brand new Fender Super Reverb amp, and I turned on the tremolo and the reverb like really high, and I started to play uh, "Damn It Otter Creek." And the weird thing is, I had dreamt the song "Damn It Otter Creek." I had a dream the night before, and I was standing underneath power lines, like those high tension power cables. And if
Yeah.
anybody that's ever done that, you can actually hear them, and they make it's a really eerie noise. It's like a low buzzing sound,
Yeah.
and it's almost a hum. And I was standing below that, and in the dream, I heard the beginning of our concert, not of an
Wow.
album. And like there was this big, ominous, like almost like thunderstorm that was coming.
Yo.
And if you know anything about live, we grew up sort of next door to 3 Mile Island. And so in the dream, I was standing at this place called Rocky Ridge State Park, and you could see in the distance 3 Mile Island, and I was standing underneath the power lines. That's what the dream was. So in the room now, next day, I'm remembering this dream, and I'm like, I gotta tap back into that. It's not something I could have done with Ed standing in the room. So when he excused himself, I started to find the note that I'd
That you
heard.
heard.
Yeah, just a single note, and that was a B on my guitar. And I held the chord. I just started mashing my fingers, just moving them, and it was going. And I was like, "That's the sound." Now I was like,
Whoa.
"Now what's the song?" And then I started to play those chords, and I did that for probably about 10 minutes. Again, like thinking, "Oh my God, you'll forget this, dummy." Now at this
Yeah.
time, fortunately, we had a DAT player and a digital audio tape, and we were recording everything. So this is actually all recorded. And
Sick.
next thing you know, Ed had never left. He was sitting in the stairwell listening me to playing, and he was writing.
Whoa.
And he walked in the room, and he like there was this little harmonica microphone, and he picked it up, and it was just distorted. I started going, "All that's left to do, done." I was like, "Oh yeah." I was
On
like,
to something
Mhm.
else here.
I fucking knew instantly. I was like, "This is it." And then, but what's interesting, so we worked on that song, and Ed and I created the architecture where it kept on going faster and faster and faster and faster. And part of that was I was grabbing the speed of the vibrato on my amp and making it go faster and faster. So it was like going by the end.
Ah.
And then we got done writing that. And then Ed said, "Okay, this is all about a band performance. There aren't enough chords and it's not complex enough. It has to be a band performance." So we showed it to Ed, or I'm sorry, to Patrick and to Chad one time. And they played gently through it. And we got done in the rehearsals. and we said, we're never playing that again until we're in the recording studio.
Sick.
Never. So what you hear on the Throwing Copper recording is the very first time that the band actually committed fully to playing the song. And it's captured on tape. And Gracey tried, if you listen to the very end of the song, he technically misses a kick drum beat. And he was like, guys, I can't believe I fucked it up. I messed up the very end of the song. Like, we played it perfectly. And Gracey said, basically into Jerry Harrison and Lou Giordano that was engineering, he was like, give us another take. And Jerry Harrison walked into the room. He said, no way. No way. We'll never get it better. That's
he knew.
it. And so those are that's the magic. So when we were talking about the collaboration, like, honestly, other than the architecture that Gracey was going to go faster and that Patrick understood where the chord changes were, we left it to the whole, to the body.
Yeah. And someone was asking,
and you get that.
Okay. Yeah. Someone was asking my process for that song. My inspiration for that song was the song Exit by U2 from the Joshua Tree. That song, Damn It Otter Creek, reminds me at least of Exit. If you go back and listen to that song, the way Larry plays that, that's kind of what I was emulating. And then the beginning kick drum beats where it's all distorted and big delays, that was from the beginning of Acton Baby. Remember, we're sitting in the super high, sitting in the fucking conference room in England, listening to Acton Baby for the first time. Because we got super high. We were driving around England or driving around London with the record company guy, Toby, and we all ate hash and got super high.
Yes.
And we ended up back at the record company's office, and we're sitting in this room. They just put us in the room. They knew we were all shit. We were all fucking super high. We're just like tripping out, just laughing. And
they were like, put the kids away.
Yeah. And they brought in copies to each of us of Acton Baby. And it was just out or coming out. It wasn't out yet. I can't remember. And so I was like, oh, fuck yeah. So they give us CD. So I went up to the stereo equipment and I put mine in. And it's like, no. And I was like, why are Larry's drums distorted? This is fucked up. Give me yours. Mine's fucked up. So I put in someone else's, but yours is fucked up too. Ended up going through all four of them. And then we're like, oh shit, this must be how they start the record.
How funny.
But that's what inspired the drum hits. And like, I wanted it to sound like that. And then the song Exit is my inspiration for the whole song.
Just saying, as a fan of your guys' music, like, these stories are like giving me chills for one, but two, it's so sad that you guys were having so much magic in a room together making this fucking music, and like now we're here and we don't have you guys doing that. Like, it's just crazy.
Well, we haven't done it other than the Turn and the Gracious Few, we haven't done this for forever with live.
Right.
We did a little bit we did get in a room for Birds of Prey and write some songs kind of the old way. I mean,
and there's a couple of bangers on there.
Yeah.
I always think that's a Chad Taylor song, the second song off of
was she one of yours? No, that wasn't.
I think I wrote Like I Do.
Yeah, Like I
Lighthouse
Do.
For sure. Lighthouse for sure.
Lighthouse.
Yeah. I only said she because it's like such a rocking song on that album, and I just didn't think Ed was like kind of doing stuff.
Oh, no, but listen, Ed can write the shit out of a rock song. Are you kidding me? The opening riff to Simple Creed. I mean, man, that's fucking. I still play that every time. The two Ed songs I most consistently pick up my guitar and play are is Mirror Song, which is as a fellow songwriter, I think is Ed's ultimate very best songwriter's song. Just because of chordal structure, melody, all those things that come together. And then, I always play the riff to Simple Creed. It's freaking awesome.
Oh, you're blowing my mind, dude. I could have swore Simple Creed was a Chad Taylor riff. So that's an Ed riff. Wow.
I wish. I wish. I think that's my point, is like, it would come from all, I mean, one of my favorite live songs is Graze. I mean, Ed wrote that. I mean, or Gashead Goes West. That's an awesome song that Ed brought in that like rocks something incredible.
Yep.
So, also in live, one of the things that, I mean, he's not here on the podcast, but has to be, represented is what Patrick would bring in. The magic to those records was that you really had three initiators of ideas in Ed, myself, and Patrick. So, like for example, on uh, uh, Throwing Copper, you've got Pillar of Davidson, which is perhaps one of the band's very best all-time songs.
Beautiful.
And what I'll tell you about that's kind of fun. Uh, Ed and I, Ed encouraging more songs, more writing, said, we got to get a song from Patrick on here. Patrick had contributed Libra to The Death of a Dictionary. I'm kind of brain farting around Mental Jewelry right now, but he had written like songs that were like really moving. And Ed said, we're missing that for this album. Like we need the classic Patrick song. And Patrick had
Was
really
Waterboy Patrick off Mental Jewelry? I'm sorry to interrupt you, Chad. Waterboy, that seems like a bass heavy song.
Hey, John, real quick.
Yes,
I'm getting a lot of comments, and now my mom's writing me the screen keeps freezing, so I don't know if that's something.
I saw some of those too. It seems good on my end. I'm hoping that the replay goes out fine, but if not, I definitely have it's recording. So if there was something going on, I'll be able to put up.
We could be crashing the system.
I think so. I think so for sure.
Well, TBD came from Patrick's bass idea too, right?
Stunning. Yeah, it's like stunning. And I think this is one of the things that when we talk about the 4 magic ingredients going in creating the cake, it's okay. So single wise, I talked about the things I talked about, but a lot of like the more in-depth songs, Patrick wrote super duper emotional stuff, and like America on The Secrets of Body, which is like also that's a guitar riff that like I pick up and I play all the time. But Patrick wrote all of that. I mean, that's his birthing.
That's
and
crazy.
Then at some point it turns into this like strangeness of like, well, then why would you turn that off?
Right.
And even I don't know that. Why would you stop that?
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy to me. Like, and if it's because like you're like, because if you're saying in an interview, like, yeah, so I wrote like Selling the Drama, you're just saying it from like, you're not like getting into the nitty gritty. Like, well, I wrote this part and then Ed came in and wrote, you're just talking in generalities.
Yeah. And John, you're using words that I wouldn't say. I would say that I brought that into the universe. I never say I wrote it. We wrote it. We, the collective. The only reason why I ever want to say that is because, all 4 guys in the band were so integral to the process. You don't get really one without the other. And this is, so Peter Friedman passed away. That was our manager. For anybody that doesn't know, he passed away in 2003. And that was, I think, for me, spiritually, the beginning of the end, which is, an awfully long time ago. But we fumbled that as a group of young men and our leadership from a management standpoint. Basically, when Peter had his funeral, first of all, we didn't know he was sick, and then he suddenly and tragically died. And rather than saying to the band, "Hey, like, let's cancel the tour. How about some therapy? Time for grieving, all those things." While everybody was at Peter's memorial service in Lancaster, because he happened to be from Lancaster, Live was literally halfway around the world on stage in Australia. And we never took a moment to like pause and say, what does this mean for us? Yeah. And then the whole architecture of our leadership, we had David Sestek and Peter Freeman, which were very much, they balanced each other. Sestek was so obsessed with the art. He wanted to make sure every font was correct and every picture of the band was, crystal clear, or even not crystal clear, whatever it was, to keep those brand standards there. Mm-hmm. And then Peter was more like administrative, like he was worried about the recording contracts, record promotion, all those things. And so I really do believe that we had some sort of super team back then, and they managed us from Death of a Dictionary all the way into, I actually think, a little bit of Birds of Prey. And then Peter died, and then Ed suggested this man, Gary Kurfürst, who was our label president, become our manager, the band's manager. And anybody that's a lawyer out there instantly goes, well, geez, isn't that a conflict of interest? Well, yeah, inherently it was, but also at the same time, like Gary was definitely the most talented manager that we knew at the time. But I didn't really understand that that was really the beginning of major changes. And then I know for me, my personal experience was I got a contract in the mail. Gary moved the band out of MCA Records and off of his own label, Radioactive, and moved us over to Epic Records. And I was very excited about going to a new record label, new beginnings, all those things. And I got a copy of the recording contract, an execution copy for me to sign in the mail. And as I paged through it, I recognized I was smart enough at the time, like we had signed enough big deals to read the deals. I don't know that I fully understood every nuance of what I was signing. But I read through and I pretty soon figured out that there was an entire section of the record that was dedicated towards an Ed solo record.
Right.
And there was no discussion about this. Yeah, nothing. I literally just read it in the thing like real time.
Not from management, not from Ed. No one discussed it with us.
Our quote unquote lawyers that were supposed to represent all of us. And I was like, what the hell is this? And then it got excused to me as well. The language is vague enough that any one of us could release a solo record if we wanted to. But I mean, let's be honest.
A little gaslighting. Gaslighting was.
Yeah.
And,
this is for everybody. It's okay. Yeah. Okay.
You guys will love it. It'll be great.
Right.
And then what I eventually learned, which I didn't know at the time, is as we went in to make songs from Black Mountain, Ed sent us, again through lawyers, he sent us a band member agreement.
Yeah, no discussion again.
No discussion, no anything like it. But he sent us a band member agreement that basically said, you guys will sign this or I'm leaving the band. And that agreement assigned Ed the majority control of all the songwriting.
Wow.
Right.
And so I've never talked about that before.
And only him getting credit on the records from them forward.
Yes, that's correct.
Right.
And I never talked about it before because I just thought it was bad for business. Like that's our business behind the scenes. But it was so aggressive that at some point Ed had actually poked Patrick in the chest and he said, you just remember I Am Live. Wow. And I only know that because Patrick's mom told me that story recently. And I was like, dude, what was I? Again, I was probably lost in Neverland drinking or something. What was I doing? Because that's a moment where you say, this is a crisis intervention. Don't do that. Yeah. And Patrick said, he was basically at home and, completely, and I'm not trying to speak out of term. I'm sure it's something that Patrick himself should and can express. But he was feeling like, well, I just have new babies and I have a family to take care of. I can't really quit the band, but in his spirit, he wanted to quit.
Sure.
And I told him, I said, look, we got on a phone call. We're all tight. And we called each other and said, look, we're big boys. Maybe this is just a phase. Let's just, put our best effort in. And then that turned into songs from Black Mountain. And I went into Jim Wirt, who was the producer, who I just love. Jim's a great guy. Yeah. And I said, look, Jim, I know I'm not here as a songwriter. I'm not I made a deal with him. I said, he taught me one Beatles song per day. And I just played whatever part he wanted me to play. So when I say I put nothing into the record, I just I didn't like the songs. I was I almost like I was a computer program. I'll just try and show up and be professional, not be argumentative or anything. Be a pro and just submit myself to the process. Then later on, I learned, well, Gracey was doing the same thing. Patrick was doing the same thing. So what you got really was a compromise in two layers, which was Songs from Black Mountain should have been Ed's first solo album. And he should have had professional side musicians that would have amplified and made those songs better. But instead what you got was essentially a watered down live record. Now what stinks about that is there were people that were like, well, Ed ought to have the right to make a solo record, et cetera, all those things. I wouldn't disagree. I think even Ed should have the right to be able to say, fuck you guys, I don't like you, I want to leave. What I didn't like was that it was all delivered underhanded and through lawyers, and
Yeah.
you know, like it's just like there's no integrity to the process.
Right.
And so, and by the way, I did a very poor job at that time of expressing these things to Ed. Like, for example, if I was so unhappy, well, then I wouldn't call up Ed and say, look, I'm really unhappy. Instead, what I did was like, I was like, well, this is toxic. This is terrible. I have also a family that I'm trying to take care of. I had very young children at the time. I just drank more. I mean,
Sure.
just, and that's
Mm.
not a cop out. I'm just telling you, I didn't have the maturity. I have the conversations. And in terms of management leadership, the guys that kind of had us in the cradle terms were Sestek and Friedman. Well, they were gone. Kurfürst at this point was a veteran. Like his artists are like Bob Marley, Jane's Addiction, the Ramones, Talking Heads. I mean, he had a legacy career long before he even had live, and he was a little checked out at that time. And I don't know that he was protecting the whole of the band. And so I was like, well, I guess this is what the industry wants. So fuck it, just whatever. Here you go. And then next thing you know, we're going la da dee da 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 whatever. I'm like, what the fuck is this? Like,
Yeah.
I showed up to the video set. I'm not joking. I had to pull the director aside and I said, can I get a boombox or something? I had to learn the guitar parts the day
Wow.
of the video shoot because like I was so disconnected from the whole process.
Which
And by the way,
video
I'm not mocking that song. By the way, you know,
which video did we shoot in Amsterdam?
I can't even remember the song, Chad.
Because you Patrick and I are just in the background like laughing like this is fucking stupid.
Yeah,
Phil,
I forget which one it
that
was.
why I got to give that song credit from Song for Black Man. Wings was bomb. That was a good one on that one.
yeah, it's a good. It's a great song. There's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with a single one of those songs. It just should have not been a live album.
Right. No,
Mhm.
100%. I have a question. So it seems like the four of you in general around the time from Songs from Black Mountain, but maybe even a little bit earlier, maybe weren't communicating personally as best as you should be. Like it seems like maybe you guys got to concerts, performed, and then kind of got off stage, whatever, and maybe
Really?
didn't speak.
Oh, really? You picked up on that? Crazy. Nice job. Yeah,
Well-
I mean, Patrick, Chad, and I were communicating, but we weren't communicating with Ed. Ed wasn't communicating with us. I mean,
Well, because I'm just wondering, like, why would he send, like, it like, don't even briefly mention, hey, guys, by the way, like, I want to put this terminology in this agreement for Songs from Black Mountain. Like, it just seems so backhanded. And, like, how would he expect you guys to react to that? It just seems he put you in an impossible
he
situation.
didn't care. He didn't care how we reacted to it, as long as we signed what he wanted us to sign. And if we didn't sign, he was going to leave.
Yeah, and so, but that's our fault, right? That's not Ed's fault.
I'll take blame for that.
That's our fault. Like when somebody's telling you what they really want, which is to leave, like you're supposed to say to them, well, okay, then like if I'm not good enough for you, then you should leave.
Yeah.
I think for me, I'll just speak from the side of being a husband and a father. Like I was scared to death to lose my living. That's all I really knew how to do was be a member in a band. And we had been blessed enough to really make amazing money.
Right.
So like I was like, I don't know, best qualified to be a barista at Starbucks.
Yeah.
And you know, like
it was economic, but also, as I said earlier, we were about the band. We wanted to keep the band together no matter what. Like maybe we hoped that down the line it would, he would get out of this phase of I'm fucking live.
Yeah.
And come back and like want to do shit the old way. And we had that. We even had that. I even had that expectation or that hope when we came back together in 2016. I hope, oh man, let's get in a room and do some songs. And we never did. I'd call him and say, I'm coming to York. I'm going to be there for a week. Come on down. Never would come down. Like, okay, guess we're not doing that.
Yeah.
Here we are.
There's so much pain.
Yeah.
For anybody that's listening, here's an intriguing thing, right? When I talk about like praying for these guys and like, I mean, I put in some prayers to be forgiven because I guarantee you, like I did like some fucked up shit to Ed that probably he doesn't like didn't deserve or whatever. We were all just trying to find our own version of happiness. And then there's also a weird thing, which is these four guys and the pressure on us to get along, to release new records, to do it. Even the fans now are like, we're for all intents and purposes, not on stage together. And if you read the first comments, like, when are you guys getting back together? When will you play? Well, we felt that pressure since the time we were 18, 19-year-old kids. I think that the time away from the band has been like really healthy.
Sure.
And what I would want to always say is that while these stories are truthful and they're earnest and they're all those things, they're also just like part of the past. It's just part of the narrative. Like, I don't hold ill will towards any of the bandmates, and that includes Ed. Somebody said, "Oh, Ed won't want to watch this." Well, actually, I mean, maybe you would. I think he deserves an awful lot of credit for where we are, but I think that there are whatever, like you mentioned Kurt Cobain earlier and his struggles and all those things. We each individually have our own strangeness and our own struggles. The fact that we face them as a collective, a very successful collective with a spotlight on us, also makes it like, I mean, it's just odd and bizarre. I mean, nobody, I'm sure nobody else in one of these chats is like, well, I had to spend the rest of my life with like my 3 childhood best friends cooped up like in buses and hotels and stages, whatever.
Yeah. So yeah, just so to let you guys know, kind of a thought I had as just a fan of yours is like growing. I'm like, this is great. My favorite band, they'll never break up because they're like best friends from childhood and blah, 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 blah. And then here we are now. But then when I talk about the story with people, they're like, think about it. When you are friends for that long, like it's very few and far between that you still talk to somebody you knew in, say 5th grade. I happen to have a couple that I do, but you talk to people, they don't really stay in touch that long. So like you could see kind of the double-edged sword about kind of growing up together, being so close, and then kind of getting the fame and everything so young, and then still dealing with each other kind of on that mentality is almost like kids dealing with each other,
Yeah,
Oh,
it was.
yeah.
Well, don't you know, like one of the things that I worked on when I was working on the book, I found this great news article where Chad gives the interview, and I was very interested in his perspective and who he was at that point in time. And this was right around the release of Secret Samadhi, and the record label. Of course, Lini Shoes came out and it like blazed up the charts and it was insane. And then the record label picked "Turn My Head" as the next single, and Ed wrote "Turn My Head." I mean, it's one of his most beautiful, amazing songs. Like, I mean, it's heart wrenching. I'll play it just to myself for
Yeah, it's beautiful.
to just, I don't know, feel whole or together. And it was a very strange thing because the record label, I recognize this now, by the way, I didn't know it at the time, but the record label was trying to buy the next Lightning Crashes. And so what they did was we filmed like video 1, and then that got submitted to MTV while the song was like out charting on the alternative playlists and stuff. And it was a very, very beautiful but extraordinarily esoteric video. It's a single moving shot through John Register's. It was supposed to look like his paintings, and it moved very slowly through the whole thing. And at the very end, Ed just turns his head and looks into the camera. The most non-MTV video that's ever been created by mankind.
Yeah, it was like real artsy.
I think it probably cost $1 million to make.
Wow.
Like insane, right?
Yeah, stupid.
And then the record label, MTV is like, barely playing the thing. It's just it's too out there for them. And then the record label, they hired Mary Lambert, who is famous for directing the movie Pet Sematary. They hired Mary Lambert to come in and to kind of like create an alternative version of it. It relied a little bit on some of the scenery that we painted, but it was more performance oriented, that we shot at the Trust Building in Lancaster, just a few blocks away from where we wrote Turn Copper. And they were just like, they were doing everything in their power, throwing money behind the song, and the song just, it wouldn't get air underneath its wings. It would, like, they were fighting for something that wasn't there. And the point was about Chad's interview, to give you perspective, like he said something like, that'll either sell a couple million records or we'll just move on to the next song. Like as though like selling millions of records is like, I'm just going to add some sugar in my coffee. Like just the most normal thing. But what it tells you is how our perspective about selling records and what that meant commercial success had changed so much. But I think that moments like that also slowly began to fracture the band. How does that feel when you're that songwriter and you wrote this beautiful, amazing, completely just one of the best songs that Live ever had, and yet that doesn't do what Lightning Crashes did?
Right.
Juxtaposed to Lakini's, and I started looking back at these things. So like, well, I think that's the basket of resentment where resentments begin to build. And by the way, I'm stupid in the whole thing. Like I'm still walking around just like, well, just it's all for one, be in a band. I don't know, we're having the best times of our lives. It's all fun. I don't think that was really true for Ed at that time. I do not think that he was having. I think first of all, he was the front man, so he was dealing with like nothing trains you to be famous. So there's that, right? That weirdness. We were already very strange guys to begin with, and not adding any excuses, but like we weren't the easiest bandmates in the world. That's just the truth. We you know, a lot of bands are like dictated, like it's a dictatorial environment where, you know, it's a John Bon Jovi that's like, hey, you guys maintain your space and do your thing, right? You know, and Richie, like we'll tolerate Richie because he helps write some good songs, but everybody else toe the line, get in your place. I'm not picking on those guys, by the way. They have their own system and it works. And one of the reasons why it works is because there is a dictator. But when you start when you're 13 or 15 or whatever we were when you're kids, I mean, you're just making it up as you go. We didn't understand those rules.
Yeah. Oh man, it's just crazy that, you know, like just kind of egos or just thoughts that shouldn't even been in the band kind of got in the way of the band. Because when you guys were firing on all 4 cylinders, it was just fucking, you guys were making some of the best music out there. It's just I think what is coming across from this podcast in general is that while there's a lot of hurt here, there's still doors open for the 4 of you guys to collaborate in the future if stuff gets talked about. Like, it doesn't seem like it's like there seems like there's still a lot of love between the 4, even though there might be personal and other things going on. Is like kind of the vibe I get. Well, Mr. Gracey may be saying something different.
There's love here on this podcast, and I think Patrick is coming around, but I don't know about Ed. I think he's lost and the lost cause, but I'll never say never.
Sure.
But unfortunately, there's, you know, that shit goes down and there's resentment, and we don't even know where the initial resentment really came from.
Right.
I want to quote Don Henley here, where when hell freezes over.
Right. Well, then there's that.
Well, so I made this prediction when we first started this podcast. I said, well, if worse comes to worse, we know you guys are going to reunite when you guys get inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And I still stand by that statement that when you guys do, there will be some sort of the 4 of you on stage jamming, even if there's plexiglass dividing you 4 so you can't get in the physical same space.
I'm not doing that ever again.
Yeah. Gracey back in the fish tank and me looking at him during a concert like, I love you, buddy. Are you okay in there? Like I'm visiting like a lost puppy at the shelter. Like, are you okay?
Exactly.
He's back there like looking at me like, help.
But what does that do? So does that like, what was the point of the plexiglass? Like, is it
sound?
To bust your? So it, like your drums were affecting his ears on stage? Does that plexiglass really mute the sound that much? I wouldn't.
Yeah, I mean it cuts the cymbals down. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and to be fair,
Chad plays hard.
We were at a transition there in between live stage monitors and in-ears. That was a technological change in the way artists are using monitors on stage. You know, we just had to unfortunately live through that thing. But again, I think just as a band, you know, like we just didn't handle any of those situations. We were terrible at that. Like, and there's also a vacancy in leadership. Like, I mean, all due respect, the guy that wound up managing live in the long run, like, I didn't even know who he was. I mean, I thought he was a fucking intern putz. And I really mean that, not like, I'm not trying to, I'm sure that he showed up every day and worked, but like, I didn't know he started in the Peter Friedman camp. He's like one of those guys that just like out survived everybody. Gary Kerr, but like Peter Friedman died, he was still around, so he worked under Kerr first, and then Kerr first died, and then he was like the last man standing.
Right.
So when I say there was a vacancy, like, there was no Irving Azoff in our camp that like would step up and say, like, Irving Azoff is famously the guy that like, basically told Don Henley or Glenn Fry to like shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
Like, we probably needed that.
Yeah.
We needed a strong outside leader that would have come in and said, look, if you're either going to do it my way or I'm going to bash your heads together, whatever
Right.
you take,
Yeah.
Irving Azoff, for example, would have been powerful enough to say, I'll just blacklist you. You won't work at all again,
Right.
And I think that we would have listened.
Yeah, what we got was a yes man for Ed. That's it, period.
And that's not what you needed at all.
Fuck no.
You did not need to feed that the yeses to that.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Chad. I'm sorry.
No, it's all right. I edited myself.
All right. Well, then that's a good time to go to the voicemail, gentlemen. We got some voicemails coming in from the fans. Check one of these boys out. I always do that. I go to click the play screen.
2 minutes long. Oh boy.
Yeah. Thank God and we don't know what they're saying here. So.
Good morning, Mr. Gracey. Good morning, Mr. Taylor. This is the Z-Man up here in the Poconos.
Chris Lanka.
What a brilliant, bright, wonderful new day we have here today. That you two guys got back together in the studio and hopefully hashed shit out, sat down, gave each other some hugs, maybe shed some tears. But this is a start, and it's great to see you two guys back together that have been friends forever. Like Gracey said, band therapy, everybody makes mistakes and fucks up and does things and says things they shouldn't say to each other. That's just part of life. But in reality, you go back to what started on where the friendship began.
Mhm.
And God, honestly, it's great to see you two guys back together. Congratulations. Love you. The best of luck to both of you. Now let me come down and sing some songs with you fuckers.
Yeah.
Z-Man.
Maybe so the rest of the thing is just blank. All right, cool. So he didn't have another minute. Yeah.
He's got a lot of scratching in his pocket now.
Well, that was well said by Mr.
Thank you,
Z-Man.
Z-Man. It's great to hear from you, man. He's awesome.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Mr. Chris Dalenka.
Yeah, we've never been with any shortage of incredibly warm, smart, sweet, and intelligent people that make up our fan base. And it's also nice to have that fan base as adults. It was very difficult to have a fan base as kids. Like, I didn't know what to do with that. Now I look at it like we can relate adult to adult. Like, I get into so many conversations with people and I'm like, oh, what do you do? What are you into? What's your family like? Like, there's a lot of commonality now. When we were kids, it didn't feel so much that way.
For sure. And you guys got into the stratosphere so young. I mean, by 18, you're hearing Operation Spirit, Pain Lies on the Riverside on MTV and stuff. So it's like you kind of got thrust into that limelight early. So it's like, you don't know how to deal with everything at that young age and all that jazz. And it could have been worse because I think Chad said that was Nickelodeon or Disney looking at you guys saying that you maybe should change to a boy band or something in the early stages.
That it wasn't Disney Records, but it was a label that was with Disney, right? What the fuck was it called? Yeah.
I can't remember, but it was two ladies that came up to watch us, and we did a private showcase for them. And they were like we got done, we played a couple songs. They were like, hey, sit down, guys. Can we ask you some questions and stuff? They were like, amazing show. Like, you guys are so talented. Like, we really want to sign you. And we're hearing everything. Like, for us, we're like, holy shit. Like, wow. And then maybe 10 questions in, one of the girls said, so can you guys dance? Hand to God.
Yeah.
Wow.
That was a trip.
We kind of all looked at each other and we were like, what the hell is going on? What did they just say? And I think I'm trying to be politically correct and say, I mean, like, well, I mean, we can dance, but no one wants to see us do it.
Yeah, 4 white boys
Uh,
from York.
yeah, no. So we could have been, I don't know, new kids on the block or something like that right at that time.
That's hysterical. I think this is a cool question for you guys. Any fave song that you wish you played more in concert? I'm still wishing you played Feel the Quiet River Rage, the whole song at some point in concert. From Ryan Eshelman. Anything you guys wish you played more in concert? Or less?
I wish we played Freaks more. I like playing Freaks. God, especially the last tours we did in 17, 18, 19, we didn't play too much of a eclectic set list. We were sticking to the old faithfuls.
The hits.
We had rehearsed a bunch of other songs, but apparently they didn't want to be done. So what do you do?
Was 1998?
I'll probably get blamed for that too.
Go ahead, Chad. I'm sorry.
I said I'll probably get blamed for that too.
Of course, yeah.
Oh yeah, come on now. Was 1998 a good creative year for you guys? Because it seemed like I think you guys were writing The Distance at the time, and I don't know if you were performing a lot of concerts during that year, but you performed one in New Jersey at the Stone Pony, and you only played 4 songs I ever heard before. Like it was maybe 3 or 4 off of Throwing Copper, and the rest were like all new songs that were going to be on The Distance to hear. And there was some that didn't make it to there that were absolutely, I think, some of the best live music out there. But it just seemed like a crazy cool time for you guys creatively, musically. Was it like that a good time for live?
So so I lived on Wheatland Avenue in Lancaster here, and that's before you could just email files back and forth. We were still relying on FedEx, and I had just had one of my daughters, and Ed told me, like, don't worry about mastering, I got it, or whatever. And I'd normally attended all the mastering sessions, and the FedEx showed up at my house. I had the mastering CD in it to listen to, and almost all my songs were off the record.
Right.
So there was Don't Wait, Change,
Yes.
Sun, all these amazing songs that were like hard, heavy rockers. And I don't know what I got told at the time. I clearly agreed with it at the time, which is, I don't want to be revisionistic because I really think the Distance Gear works as a collective, but that those songs just didn't work in the embodiment of the CD or whatever. And so on that record, I saw somebody write down earlier, Where Fishes Go is great. I birthed that song, brought that one into the world. And then what's another? Oh, and then They Stood Up for Love. They, and really, They Stood Up for Love is the last time I ever really collaboratively worked with Ed.
Wow.
So
that's such a killer song too. For the last collaboration, man, that's a good one. And it's kind of crazy. So there's like 2 arrangements of that song where it's like got that heavy guitar to it, and then there's like that stripped down piano version that kind of makes it like almost like a different song. Even though lyrics are the same, it's like kind of a different whole feel to it.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this, Chad. This is going to be a hard question for you because it does sound like you were so live was a huge part of your life. Like the band, like you even said, like it seemed like family life might have been failing for you at some points, and what really woke you up was like the band leaving. So I kind of want to bring you back. Like, what was it like when Ed puts out this, I don't know if it was a tweet or an Instagram where he says like publicly firing you? Like that must have just been like, what did that feel like when you got that that news?
Well, first of all, it's the most ridiculous thing in the world because you can't fire me from a band I started. So, that's not actually legally the way it works. But I understood from a spiritual place where Ed was at that point. It was definitely a strange time. What I've been told is that there was a disagreement over a dance remix of Lightning Crashes. I don't recall ever having a disagreement over a dance remix of Lightning Crashes. But I also don't remember Kurt Cobain remixing Smells Like Teen Spirit. So
That's
I
right.
don't know.
Into a dance song.
I
Yeah.
remember Eddie Vedder cutting off in the studio and creating that dance jam of the Even Flow. It's awesome.
I put it on every night.
Yeah.
I
You
dance
remember
to
that great dance version that Chris Cornell like went off and did of Super Unknown? Remember that?
And then calling it better than the original. Yes, got it.
Well, it transcends the
Oh,
original.
transcends. Yes, excuse me. Correct.
Oh my God.
No, I don't. No, I kind of knew at that point, like the writing was on the wall that this was a strange thing. I mean, legally speaking, we could get together and go out and play shows as live. I mean, there's nothing stopping us from doing that.
Right.
The only person that really can't do that is Ed, which is sort of an interesting twist.
Dude, dueling lives, bro. We might have to get this thing going here, Mr. Gracey and Mr. Taylor. Dueling lives. You guys go to the same city, see where the fans lie, see where the fans go.
Well, I'm still not convinced I'm not going to show up and play these shows. I mean,
oh my God, let's go.
Legally, if you follow all the paperwork, the contracts, the bylaws of certain corporations and etc., we're the only ones that can go out and play live. But what he's doing right now is not legal.
It looks like I gotta get on the Photoshop and remove those whatever's on that new live promo and put the real members back in there.
Yeah,
that would be.
And and back to the firing of Chad. So I was not happy with Chad at the time for whatever reasons that we are working through or worked through, and I was told, not directly by Ed, but an emissary, that there was this big blow up about the Lightning Crashes remix. And so Ed came to me and said, "Hey, you want to go out on tour?" I was like, "Sure." He's like, "Well, I want to fire Chad." I'm like, "Okay." I mean, unfortunately, that's where my mind was, but we've worked through that, and I was like, "Yeah, let's go."
At the time, yeah.
And so the whole premise of the deal was, I vote with you to fire Chad, and I'm on the road with you. And then we signed the MOU, and all of a sudden shows are played and I'm getting schedules and there's money, and all of a sudden, no, sorry, I can't have you out. I don't want to deal with the drama. Oh, okay. Yep. Well, that's not what this was supposed to be.
And from my perspective, what I was told was that Ed, Chad, and Patrick were going to continue 3/4 of the original band, carry forward without me. And I got to be honest with you, I was like, well, whatever, that's life. That's the way it goes. And I was also told, it would be like a cooling off time period or something like that. So I gave my consent in that regard because I thought it was more important that 3/4 of the band go forward. And of course, I turned around and next thing you know, Ed's announcing a tour with I don't know, anything but 3/4 of the original band. So yeah, it's a shame. It's a difficult thing to I don't know if I put Coca-Cola on a Pepsi can, is it Coca-Cola?
No,
I don't know.
No.
I saw a good name, Ed and the Kowalczyks. I'm like, that's probably a better way to describe it.
Well, I understand. I think that that our ability to be able to go out and perform these songs for the fans and to connect with the audience is something that we've each earned the right to do. We've all created this body of work, and that we should all be able to play it. But my issue is, let's just have an honest conversation, and that honest conversation looks like this. Ed doesn't want to work with you, Chad. He doesn't want to work with Patrick, and he doesn't want to work with me. And yet he wants to tour as live.
Right.
That doesn't add up. That doesn't add up.
Right. But what I'm saying is that's the real honest approach.
Yeah.
Right. That's just being honest. But those conversations weren't had. Instead, there was tomfoolery and trickery. For example, one of the worst things that happened in that time period. So Chad, Patrick, and myself had an attorney, a guy named David Costner, and Costner was our attorney for more than a decade.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say our attorney, he all the way back from the Gracious Few going forward, he was our representative, had nothing to do with Ed. And so all these tensions boil over everything, and the band's manager, Ed's manager, whatever, sent me an email and said this guy David Costner was going to reach out to have a conversation. Well, I thought my attorney was calling me, so of course I took the call. But it turns out he wasn't representing me. He wasn't representing Chad. He wasn't representing Patrick, even though he put in writing that he was a mediator. But he was actually representing Ed and his company. And so he basically used that insider information to, in legal terms, induce this agreement. And it was like, as long as this hand doesn't know what this hand is doing, I'll get my way. So we'll tell Taylor 3/4 of the band is going to tour.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll tell the other side that Taylor's going out, whatever, he's out of the band, etc. They sign agreements, and suddenly you're all fucked.
Yep.
Yeah, that's called sleight of hand, but in legal terms, it's actually called fraud.
Yeah,
exactly.
And in like a personal term, it's called being a douchebag and a fucking shitty friend. But that's just my words. Don't quote me here, folks. It's just crazy. I mean, like, I wouldn't do that to like my worst enemy. Like, you know, if it just seems crazy to do it to three dudes that you grew up with and made beautiful music with. But that's neither here nor there. I got a cool question for you. Do you have a favorite live album, Chad Taylor? I knew this would be hard for you too.
This is difficult. For a myriad of reasons, Secrets of Mahdi, and I'll only say because it's the most freeing album that we made, free from pressure. We had catapulted to success behind Throwing Copper, and everything from the writing sessions to all these like amazing experiences making the record, the videos, everything we were doing were all just the way that we wanted it. It really did congeal, and it really did. And there was no telling us no, and we weren't really fighting each other. We weren't fighting the system. We were just together. It was very, very an amazing, blissful experience. And that's not really about the songs or putting them on the way they sound. Although you guys had on Tom Lord Alge, and he tells you the story about, mixing in New York City, and it's the only live record that Tom. Well, no, that's true because he mixed Throwing Copper actually in Wisconsin. Oh shoot! Now that I think about it, so we got Tom out of his home base in Miami. I think that was good for both Throwing Copper and for Secrets of Mahdi, now that I think about it. And of course, his influence on those records is insurmountable. And just the tones and everything that's on Secrets of Mahdi and the purity. I know I was at my very, 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 very best on that record. Chad Gracey was at his very, very, very best. Patrick at his very, very best. And Ed was at his very, very, very best. And like that's rare when you get that, when it can all come together, when the pressures of life and manhood and all the things that come with having families and all that difficult stuff, that wasn't pounding down on us so much.
Well said. And you guys were in like a fucking real difficult spot too, to come off the major success you had with Throwing Copper. Like everybody's expecting you to put out this banging third album, and you guys definitely delivered on it, but there must have been an intense amount of pressure, but it seems like it rolled right off you guys' back and you were firing on all cylinders at that particular moment in time. Somehow.
Chatty, what was your experience with Secrets of Mahdi? I'm just curious.
Oh, I mean, I was thinking exactly what you said. Like we had all that success, and everyone's perception is that we had all this pressure from the record company, but we didn't. We were like, we were. I think the way we were is, I mean, we were probably all had a little ego, and like we fucking blew up. We were huge, and we're like, yeah, we're gonna make a record, but we're gonna make it our way.
That's not ego. That's confidence. That sounds like confidence to me. That doesn't sound like
confidence,
ego.
sure.
Yeah.
But Secrets of Mahdi is my favorite record too, for a lot of those reasons. And I just had never put it into those words, but I echoed that.
I can remember very specifically we did a writing session, really more of an arrangement session, where we had gone into the Chameleon Club while no one was in there, and we had set up on the floor of the Chameleon, not the stage. We had asked Rich Ruoff, the owner, if we could play in there. And Ed had written Grace.
Mm-hmm.
And we hit the freaking chorus of that song And I am telling you, I believe for at least 2 minutes I floated off the ground. That it was so magical the way all the instruments congealed. It was, it's still earth shattering. Actually, it's kind of funny because I would tell you it's the record that I listen to the least because when I hear that, I'm like, how do you fuck that up? Like, how, like, we had the secret sauce.
Yeah.
And I'm blaming each of us. You know, like
Mhm.
John, you're like, oh, whatever I get it. You pick on Ed or whatever. I'm not picking on him. His circumstances, whatever his circumstances. I'm saying as a collective, how do we let each other down? How do we let the fans down? How do we ever let go of that? Like, you have, like, in sports terms, you have the championship team. It's the same coach. It's the same players. It's all those things. But for whatever reason, you're suddenly the Boston Celtics and you can't duplicate it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, it just shows the progression you guys were on to go from mental jewelry to throwing copper to secret samadhi, and they just keep getting incrementally better. It shows you guys were working with the right formula, and whatever was going on, the magic was there. And the fact that you guys weren't feeling the pressures is like, like Chad mentioned ego, but I think it's just your confidence because you guys knew what you were doing was legit, and how could you not be confident with it?
I just
Correct.
realized my computer battery's on 2%. I want to go and run and get my charger.
Yeah. Well,
Carry on.
I gotta go
Do
soon
it.
too. I gotta go pick up Phoenix from school. So.
I want to
Yeah,
play
what
the
the
last two
hell?
voicemails for the audience, and then we'll end this. We'll wind it down real quick.
You play that. I'm going to be listening. I'm going to get the power so it doesn't just turn off.
Rock
Perfect.
on. All right, ladies and gentlemen, 2 of 3 voicemails going on right now, and I almost clicked the play button on the wrong screen. Here we go. Dun dun dun.
Hello, John. Hello to the Chads. And hello to the gracious audience. This is Troy Garman checking in.
Troy.
Big fan, as a lot of you probably know by this point. Did not have the opportunity to meet Mr. Taylor. I hope I can sometime in the future. I'm happy that you guys are mending fences. It gives us fans hope that there could be more music and collaboration in the future. And I would also like to wish Chad Taylor success in his sobriety journey, and I hope everything is going well with that. And my question, or I guess comment, might be as I've talked with Mr. Gracey about some of the songs that have been written, it seemed to have the ones that I seem to like the most always had a lot of Chad Taylor touch on them. And I was just wondering how many songs are still sitting out there that could have been part of the live catalog that we did not get the opportunity to hear. So I'd love to hear your responses to that. Thanks, guys. Best of luck. And thank you guys for all the music you put out there. Really appreciate it.
Troy Garman. Good stuff there.
Well, so Troy brings up an interesting topic, which is Gracie and I have been in conversations about doing a podcast where we would unearth the live musical archive.
Mhm.
Yes.
I mean, there's, I don't know, 20 albums worth of songs. I mean, it's a lot. It's an awful lot.
Wow.
It's it's probably not the size of Prince's vault, but yet it's an enormous archive, and it's never seen the light of day.
Wow.
And we've been talking about just like doing this, sort of like semi chronological thing where we would pull out tracks and tunes and like play them and have people call in and get involved with the music. These aren't, by any means finished pieces.
Right.
And there's like, I have like, for example, in my collection, like the early CBGB's cassette tapes from the board, like from when we were
Oh.
Public Affection and like before, like it was even live.
Wow.
In fact, I have a cassette on a cassette tape, a recording that was made in my parents' or in my bedroom at my parents' house of us playing. And it's not stuff that I would want to do. Uh, I think what I was going to say is like Well, I don't think it's anything that I want to particularly put and release in some cases, but just to hear magical like little moments like where we're growing, where like Ed hasn't like come into his own with his voice, or Gracie's screwing up drum parts, or I'm probably playing wrong chords or whatever. Patrick, by the way, always played the right stuff, even back then. But well, it's so funny. Everybody wants to see the Ruby guitar.
Yeah.
She's packed away at the moment. And then also the other daughters, there's a Delilah guitar and a Scarlet guitar, and then the girls get mad. Like if as I would do the tour dates, if I took out the Delilah guitar, I would hear from Scarlet and Ruby like, "Why aren't you playing my guitar?" So I have to give them all equal airtime now.
That's awesome. I love it. That's cool. I didn't know that. So the other two were named after your daughters too. That's awesome. I knew Ruby Lou. That's great.
Yeah, they're all 1961 or 62 Jazzmasters, Fender Jazzmasters. The black one is the Delilah guitar. The Fiesta Red is the Scarlet guitar. And of course, the Seafoam Green is the Ruby Lou guitar.
Oh, what a good dad too. So you picked the same guitars too. So they weren't, no guitar was better than the other.
Yes, that's right.
I love it, man. Good stuff. All right, let's go to this last voicemail. And Chad Taylor, unfortunately, we're going to have you on again, man. The fans have spoken. They love you. They want more from you. So we're going to have to get you on here again for sure.
Oh, thank you, guys. I just want to say it's been amazing being on here. I'm excited to hear this voicemail.
Ditto. Let's do. Oh, this is only 4 seconds, so we might not have much. Let's see.
Okay. 4 seconds. Oh.
Taylor, you fuck.
Okay. Well, there we go. Thank you for that comedy.
That's my favorite one.
Mine too. That's my
favorite one.
There it is, Mr. Taylor. Play us out.
Who was that?
I don't know, but we will look that up for sure.
I don't know, but he's my favorite fan. He's probably right too.
Chad, we want to thank you for
also the podcast that we're contemplating, we're probably going to do it's going to be about archives of the music, but also explaining, like as I said before, that Chad has this amazing basically spreadsheet of every day of our life from
tours,
from
studio.
When 1988, 89 sometime.
Yeah, basically, well, from our birth, which is pretty crazy. Each
Right.
of our births.
So I mean, we would spend time on that podcast going through like sometimes going through days. Like, what were you doing on this day? You were in Athens, Georgia, playing at the, at this theater on the Mental Jewelry Tour, and Michael Stipe was in the audience, and you guys saw him dancing around on the friggin', on the balcony of the theater. Like, talk about stuff like that. We can do it by day. It's amazing to,
I think we could have 3,000 podcasts because there are 3,000 entries.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah. Amazing. Anyway, so that's the idea, and we're working on it, and we're talking about it. We've been concentrating on other stuff right now, but yeah, it is a definite possibility.
That's on the horizon. They are working on it as we speak. They're giving you the little inside information, letting you know that's coming up. Well, that's exciting, man. As a fan of both of yours and music and stuff, that'll be cool to hear all the bird's eye view kind of your guys, days back in the day, hearing it from the horse's mouth, so to speak. That'll be cool.
If there's any lesson to be a summary lesson from all this, and I want to remind myself of all this, the most important thing is to let the past in the past. Whatever's been done back then, it's just done. It just is. It's over with. It doesn't matter. You don't have to go back over it. Forgiveness is the key. I'm telling you, it's the secret sauce. It's the secret sauce to everything. I'll remind everybody, and I'll ask you to do the same. Say your prayers for all of us. Say your prayers for Ed. Say your prayers for Patrick. Say your prayers for Chad Gracey. Same for me. Same for John. And, because ultimately, believe it or not, those energies do come together. I think the fans have more of a say than us individual members. We wouldn't be here talking if you didn't buy the records and you didn't support us and participate. So what's saying that you wouldn't, be that energy, the thing to like congeal and bring us back together? You just never know.
I love it.
There you go.
I always try to wrap this.
Never.
Never say never. I always try to wrap this up with something cool, but you put the nail on the head right there, and we're going to leave you with that, audience. Gracious audience, it has been real. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, everybody.
Blessings.
Take care.